Welcome back to Remodeling Reinvented. Today, we're excited to sit down with Jackson Design and Remodeling's architect, John Kavan, who you may remember from an earlier episode. John works with homeowners every day to transform their homes into spaces that better fit their lifestyles. And some of the biggest trends we're seeing right now is the growing interest in accessory dwelling units, or ADUs for short, along with multi generational living. Whether you're thinking about creating space for aging parents, adult children, guests, or simply adding flexibility and value to your home, today's episode is packed with practical advice to help you decide if an ADU is the right fit for you. We hope you enjoy today's episode. Welcome back to the show, John.
Welcome, John.
Thank you. Thank you, guys.
Yeah, thank you for being here. So let's just jump right in. So, for anyone who's new to this ADU topic, let's go ahead and cover some of the fundamentals. So, in your own words, what exactly qualifies as an ADU? And from a design standpoint, what are some of the most common types that you and the team design or see?
Sure. I think first you need to kind of look at the history of residential property. So, in the city, and we can take the city of San Diego as an example, you have areas within the city that are zoned a certain way. And if you look at zoning, there's in the residential zone, you got between 14 and 15 different zones, and each zone has their own requirements, whether it's setbacks or height restrictions or density, meaning how many units can you put on a lot. Most residential projects are a low density type of project, which means per lot you can only have one residence. Well, as the California housing crisis started kind of picking up more, the government decided, hey, we need to do something and add more housing so that people can afford to live. And so, what they've done is the state of California developed standards for something called an ADU, or an accessory dwelling unit. An
Mhm.
accessory dwelling unit is additional to a single family residence that's already on a property. There's many different purposes that you can use an ADU. And so, let's define what makes it an ADU. An ADU is a living unit that you can live independently, which means you need a sleeping area, you need a full service kitchen, and it's separated from the main residence. Now, you can be attached, but you can't have access from the main residence. You can be detached, which located on different parts of the property. So there's a lot of variations that go into an ADU and what defines an ADU.
Okay. And what are some of those specific types that you've seen?
Sure. An ADU can be located on grade at the same level as the main house. You can take up over the garage. You can attach to the main building,
Mm.
but there are differences and allowances in the regulations on where you put it. As an example, if you are wanting to do an ADU over a garage and it's back in an alley and that garage is right on the property line, you're allowed to do that. So you are encroaching into the typical setback, the building setback, because they're allowing you to go right over the garage. The other option is you can be detached off of the house. Now, that also will allow you to go into the setback. Why is that good? It's because some of these properties don't have a lot of space. And so by locating these structures closer to a property line, it opens up and frees up the backyard. So, depending on each case and scenario, each of the regulations will change.
And I've even heard of something called a junior ADU. So what's the difference between a regular ADU and a junior ADU?
An ADU is independent, as is a junior ADU, but a junior ADU has more restrictions to it, which means they're smaller. An ADU typically can go up to 1,200 square feet and or 50% of the existing residence with a minimum of 800 square feet. A junior ADU, you may only go up to 800 square feet, and they need to have access, direct access from the main house.
Mm.
The kitchen can be smaller. It's more of an economy type of kitchen. So each of those they have their own differences as far as restrictions go.
And Some other words we've heard over the years for an ADU, granny flats, mother-in-law suites, cottages. I mean, it seems like there's a lot of different words to cover ADU.
Essentially, the main difference is an ADU must have a kitchen. To
Okay,
where if
okay.
you're doing a pool house, you're limited on how much counter space you can have. And these are main points, let's just say, for the city of San Diego. Once you go to various other subcities like Encinitas or Carlsbad or Solana Beach, those have their own different regulations and requirements. So those change. What you were speaking of with Granny Flat, that's more of an accessory structure, and they're gonna each city and jurisdiction is gonna have their own requirements for an accessory structure.
Okay, wow, it's very technical. Mm.
Yeah, asking, we'll get people come in and say, "Hey, we're looking to do an ADU on this property." And we're like, "Well, where is it?" "Well, it's in Solana Beach." "Well, what part of Solana Beach?" "Well, it's close to the ocean." "Okay, it's close to the ocean. How big is the lot?" So you gotta ask all these questions, not a simple yes or no. It's a probably, but we need to research it so that we can develop what those standards look like.
'Cause it's all so different.
All very specific to the area you live in.
Yeah,
Yep.
okay, and from your perspective, why do you think interest in ADUs has grown so dramatically over the last, I mean, probably, like, at least 5
5
years?
years, yeah. Yeah, and every year it changes. The state will update their requirements on ADUs and, as a difference, they'll say, "Hey, you don't need to have parking if you're within a transit area." So, I think part of the initial interest was, "Hey, I've got a property. I got this big property, and in back, it's just dirt back there, and I live in San Diego, and it's not cheap to live in San Diego. Well, what can I do?" "Well, let's build an ADU, and I can get rent for that property." Well, that's what the initial thing started being. And then it kind of evolved where people are like, well, now I can add a unit for later to where right now, maybe I need it for my mother in law because she's lives in Florida and she needs to live with somebody. So she's going to come out here. She can live in the ADU. And then, once that use is done, we can use it as a pool house. We'll put a pool in later, becomes a play area, or we have children, and right now they're 5. So it'd be nice to be able to use that space for entertaining, and then later on down the road, rent it, or the kids can use it, and then you've got multi-generational projects where, as an example, we have one in Encinitas right now where you can do 3 units, plus we're gonna have an ADU. So it's gonna be a home that the mother lives in, the kids will eventually live in, and it becomes a multi-generational property. So it really opens up opportunities on a property where before you may not have been able to do any of this stuff.
It really gives people a lot more flexibility with how they wanna use it. It's not just for one purpose of rental, income, it could be for something else later on.
Yes, and it adds value to the property. Anytime you can build buildable area on your property, it adds value to it.
Right, exactly, and you mentioned California specifically has made several changes, so you continue to keep an eye on those laws and regulations, and then you inform the homeowner if they're coming in to see you, like, "Hey, I wanna convert my garage into an ADU," or you just talk them through that?
Yeah, we have to update almost twice a year, or at least get familiar twice a year, and it's specific to the lot. We may have a project director come in and say, "Hey, I've got a property in Point Loma area," and we'll look at the property and go, "Oh man, there's not a lot of space here that we can use." But because the state mandates that you have to be allowed at least 800 square feet,
Mhm.
that opens up a lot of avenues. We'll replace it now dependent on, like you said, maybe it goes over the garage. That might be the easiest way to do it and you get value out of that. But can you do that? Because we got to get stairs to that upper unit. Where do the stairs go? Is it easier because it's an older home and it's on a raised foundation? Is it easier to just do it as a separate structure and do a slab on grade? And do they have
I
room to
see.
do that?
Mhm. So you'll come up with solutions after doing some research and go, "Is this even possible?
Correct.
And is this the best solution? Have you thought of this?" If someone is just at the beginning stages of thinking about building or turning something into an ADU, What do you think is the first steps they should take? Or is there initial research they should do on their own?
Yeah, you can do research on your own, but because code changes and evolves constantly, a lot of times we know what's coming down the hill. We may get a notice from the city of San Diego saying, hey, matter of fact, I just got one recently that said we're doing a live video conference with the city of San Diego talking about SB9. SB9 is another state possible bill that will allow you to subdivide your property where you can use that ADU and sell it off. That's a small portion of the bill, but that's,
Mhm.
so you can do that research. But I would say talking to a professional is the most important thing you can do because
Yeah.
we'll research it. We'll look at it not only for the practicality of where it's located, but also the aesthetic, the function, and everything that comes with building a structure.
Right. And you, as an architect, I'm sure you take into account when you're designing the ADUs how it looks alongside the main house. Because in San Diego specifically, there's a lot of older homes and the architecture's probably been there a while. And do you try to tie those in if you can?
You can look at it in two different ways. I like to say design matters a lot
Hmm.
because it really does.
Yeah.
You're creating an environment for people to live in. And so when you plunk down a structure on a building in the backyard, how does that relate to the existing structure and how is it going to be used? So if you're going to do it like attached to a pool, then you want to have some adjacencies to that pool. You're not going to shove it down the hill or won't be used as much. I mean, and those are all possibilities, right? So with design, you've got, a built space, you have an existing house, and then you have what I call negative space, what's in between the built spaces. That is just as important as the built space itself and how it attaches and it relates to each other. Architecture, we're trying to beautify the space. We're trying to make it cohesive and useful. And so
Yes.
those are all things that we're looking at on the design side.
Correct. And you mentioned in our conversation the other day that the majority of these people are not actually using them for rentals. They're using them for other purposes. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Sure. We've got a project right now that we're talking to the client about adding an ADU. It's a project that's under construction right now, and they're trying to plan for the future. And we talked to them yesterday, and they're like, well, we don't want to rent it. It's going to be more for family when family comes to visit or when the kids get older, like I was saying before. So my question was, well, do you need a full kitchen then? And
Mhm.
they're like, "Well, not really." So
Oh.
that's really what's gonna kick you into an ADU application. And what's the difference in doing a accessory building versus an accessory dwelling unit? Well, the dwelling unit is gonna be more intensive, meaning it's gonna have its own address. You may have to do electrical independent of the main panel. You may wanna do a separate sewer hookup, gas lines coming in, water lines coming in. But if you're doing just a pool house and you're not doing a cooking arrangement, you don't have to do all that stuff. So you can look at it differently as, all right, well, we're just doing an accessory space.
Yes.
As long
Okay.
as you meet your floor area ratio, no problem.
Oh,
Wow.
I just learned
I
something.
know, me too.
I
Different.
think I hear this term ADU all the time, whether
Mhm.
it's on the news or I'm reading a news article about it. And I always just assumed an ADU is an ADU. But
Mhm, mhm.
so,
Yeah, they're different.
yeah, that's really interesting. And speaking of just multi generational homes, you probably look at accessibility a lot. So the way they access the ADU is important.
100%. I mean, not only how it ties in to the main house, right? How do you get from the main house to the ADU? Well, if it's an aging in place parent and that's where they're going to live, and that's popular because that gives the aging parent their independence and yet you're still connected to the family. So you want to be able to make it easy in and easy out from the main house to the ADU. The ADU then maybe is at the same level, or you can ramp or you can do lifts to get down to the level, but ideally, it would be on the same level. And then once you get into the ADU, having wider doors, the typical accessibility stuff and adaptability, because those are two different animals too. You can do a kitchen area that's adaptable, which means, cabinets come out and you can roll in. So later, when it's going to be a full kitchen for the family and not the mom, then that becomes, you can turn it back to it being just a standard unit. You may want to do bathrooms that's a little wider so a chair can circle around. You may want to do a curbless shower where you just roll right in. So there are many components that go into an accessible type of unit. And that's something that you should talk to your professional about. So asking questions, what are you using it for? Make sure you bring those points up.
Right. And are you seeing more families creating spaces for even their adult children that are returning home? Have you seen an uptick in that lately?
Yes, I'm doing a pair of ADUs where they're thinking along the lines that, hey, my kids are 7 years old right now. They're going to go off to college. We can rent them out. And later on, when they get older, they can come back and they have a place to live. And so
Awesome.
we'll have a compound here, basically a family compound,
I love
which is,
it.
Great,
yeah, it's
yeah.
great.
And it seems like there's a lot of people who now work from home. And have you seen people where they want a separate unit or space dedicated to their workspace? Have you seen that?
For sure. And that is probably the majority of the options is that, hey, I'm going to use this as a multi-use space. I'm going to work during the day and we'll have a Murphy bed that can turn down. And when my mom comes to visit for a month, I use mom all the time. Poor dads.
I know.
Never get any credit. So when dads come to visit, they have a place to stay. And then they can go back to where using a multi-use type of space and still works to be multi-generational.
You can work from home, and then if you wanna have friends or family stay with you, you at least have a space for them to sleep and hang out and just have a little bit of separation.
Yeah, you may not want them in your house. I don't know how
Yeah,
friendly are,
I know. I'm like,
Well,
I
dads,
don't
they
know.
snore real loud, so
After a weekend, you're like, "All right,
yeah, you need to
you
move
gonna go
out.
back
Yep.
home?"
That's right.
If someone is out there interviewing remodeling companies or who they're gonna work with, are there any specific questions they should be asking their professionals?
I think the main thing is to go down the laundry list of A, what do you want to do?
Okay.
B, is it possible to do it? And see what are the regulations that's going to be put on you for that lot itself. Those are the main big chunks. And then design's going to fall in later because we can design anything to work, especially aesthetically. One thing you did mention was, are you matching the architecture? Do you make it look like the main house? We definitely can. And I would say the majority of people kind of lean that way,
Mhm.
but you also could change the language of the architecture completely and let it be a beacon out there, something that's special. Make
Mm,
it more playful. Or so if you have a Spanish style home, maybe you do something that's a little bit more modern and playful. So
Interesting.
there's a way to kind of do a yin and a yang. You could always do yang and yang,
yeah.
but yin and yang that allows you to kinda flex that creative juice, so allows you to kind of fit your personality. Because some people move into homes and they're like, "Well, this isn't really me, and so we're gonna redo the kitchen so it looks more like a shaker type kitchen." Well, maybe you wanna carry that architecture to the outside. So it's okay to change that language. In my opinion, I think if you're gonna change the language, it needs to be far off. Don't
Mhm.
almost match the architecture. If you're gonna match the architecture, match it.
Mhm.
That way it looks like it's intentional. Same going the other direction. So if you're doing something that's outside of the existing architecture, don't match it. Make sure you're so far off that it's creative and
Okay.
yet organized.
Oh,
I like that.
I know.
That's really interesting. And what do you think are some of the biggest reasons homeowners would go to a company like Jackson Design and Remodeling, talk to you about it versus, I mean, there's a lot of options out there. They have prefabricated ADUs, people buy them online
I
and have
know.
them
Amazon.
shipped to their
I don't
so
know.
what are some of those differences and that you've seen and have you even heard of people where they regretted going one route over the other?
I think what happens, and I got a call last week, and I was talking to him on the phone, and he's like, "Hey, I want to buy a plan. If I buy this plan, can you change a couple things for me?" Well, as soon as you do that, you voided that plan. You may want to go to an architect, and you may work with an architect, and then you come to a design build company, and we look at it, and we're like, "Hey, wait a minute. If we do this, we can save you some money." Or ends up being more expensive than they were thinking it was going to be,
Hmm.
the prefab stuff. I think the biggest difference is these things tend to be since they're small, everything is very exaggerated, meaning every little tiny thing is a big thing because you're within a little space. And so people look at it and go, well, I wanna move the door over a little bit, or I wanna make the kitchen a little bigger, or I want to move the bedroom that's in back and I wanna move it to the other side. Well, that's not a problem, but now you've voided everything on a pre-built plan or a pre-built set of plans.
Okay.
So if you come to us, we're gonna ask these questions intelligently, find out what matters, and then we'll design out the space. So it's going to be custom to your preference. And that also helps us modify and keep an eye out on costs.
And why do you think architecture is such an important part of this whole planning process and the design process?
Look, I'm old. I've been through this process many times, right? I went to school for it. And
Mhm.
so we talk about space planning a lot. We talk about how a building is massed, how it relates to the existing architecture, how does it flow, what's the adjacencies of spaces. These are all questions a good architect is going to ask. Those are some,
Mm.
but that allows you to get into the space of the client's head and what they're looking to do. And it's going to be an easier way for them to get what they want.
And so you get into more some of the more emotional aspects of something that seems pretty straightforward from the outside looking in. You're like, "Oh, it just has this living room and this little kitchen. It can't be that difficult." But you actually look at all these other pieces.
Well, yeah, you're looking at, well, how's the sun affect, I want this large sliding door. Well, how's that sun gonna look at 4 o'clock in the afternoon shining through the living room space? Is that gonna be comfortable to you? If we take that building and we tweak it 20 degrees, you might be able to kinda shade out that sun. Where are your views? Right? So when we're planning out a space, we are talking to the client about, well, we're thinking about the bedroom over here, thinking about the bathroom over here, and the living over here, and there's a reason for that because of this, the solar sun that's coming in, it's going to be affecting in the space. Well, maybe we put a covered patio there,
Mm.
right? And that kind of cuts that down a little bit. Where's the views? Is that important? What about privacy? When if you are going to rent it out, how do you separate the main house from the ADU? I don't want to see the neighbors that are living here. I don't know them. That may change over 5 years, right?
Yeah.
We've had people even to the point where they have done these units, move into the units and then rent the house. So that's another
Oh,
idea and
another
option there.
option.
Yeah,
So, at the end of the day, taking all of this into consideration, do you believe that an ADU really is worth that initial investment?
100%.
Yeah.
Like I said, anytime you can build a built environment, you've added value to your property. Let's say you live in La Jolla. Homes in La Jolla may be going for $1,000 a square foot. You add 600 square feet, that's $600,000 of value to your property.
Wow.
Even if it costs you $600,000 to build the unit, that's almost like free money,
Right.
right?
Yeah. And what are some of those design decisions that you believe add the most long term value in these ADUs?
I think right sizing it so that there's a balance between the cost of construction versus the use that they're going to have. So somebody may come to us and say, "Hey, I want a 1,200 square foot 2 bedroom ADU. Why do you want 1,200 square feet?" Well, because I want enough living space so that, it's you can use it during the day while we're in the pool. Well, now you have 2 bedrooms that are sitting in back that are not getting used, but maybe twice a year.
Mm,
right? If families coming in twice a year. Now, a lot of people like to visit San Diego,
mm,
right? If you're from the Midwest and it's cold and, you look over here in San Diego at 70 degrees and it's like, hey, I
Mhm.
want to go visit Steve over here and spend some time in La Jolla.
Yeah.
So, you got to weigh that balance. Now, it may not matter to you. That may be important that you have the ability to have friends and family come anytime they want. But you can balance and say, look, in reality, I only have one real friend that's gonna come visit me. If anybody else comes, well, maybe there's an option to sleep in the living area. So you can right size the project. Maybe it comes down a little bit or it expands a little bit. Depends on how
mhm.
you're gonna use it.
Okay. And on the other side of it, are there features that people often regret leaving out of their project?
That's a good question because sometimes what you put in is just as important as what you leave out. Well, I had mentioned when you've got sun kind of glaring into a space, you never really think about, well, maybe we want a covered patio here. Maybe that connects to the house or it has a relationship to the house. That makes that smaller space more usable. So if you have a living room and a kitchen that's combined together, it may only be, say, 16 by 16 in the space because we're trying to save square footage. We've got 2 bedrooms on the other side that, we gotta fit all this content in. Well, if we do a large sliding bifold door or a double track slider, we do a covered patio, now that inside space is bled into the outside space. And not only is it functioning on a larger scale, visually, it's gonna feel larger.
Mm,
Okay.
that's a great point.
Wow.
And are there some ADU trends that you've been seeing? You had mentioned the other day about certain types of doors that you've seen an uptick in.
Yeah, typically these want to open up a little bit more. There are newer regulations that in the past we would do a large bifold door and it would open up from the living room outside to the patio, like we were just talking about.
Mhm.
Well, now they're requiring you to do a single man door, and that's more for adaptability. So if somebody's in a chair, it needs to be easy in and easy out. Where a bifold door system, you have to unlock, you've got to pull it. It's a little bit more of a vent to get into this rolling into a 3 foot wide door main portion of it. So we have to kind of plan that and figure out where that door is going to go, make sure it still functions.
And then how about the appliance companies? Have you seen any changes on that front?
A lot of appliance companies now are doing packages, and the packages may be for the main house, which are going to be bigger, more robust. And then ADUs, they can do ADU packages where maybe the refrigerator is only 24 inches.
Mhm.
The cooktop could be just more of a smaller 2 burner cooktop, if we're trying to do an economy type of kitchen. And, maybe there's just a microwave there.
Yeah.
So there are various options as far as sizing kitchens and appliances that we can look at and explore as you go through the process.
And did you say there was a laundry system that is a washer dryer combo?
It's kind of a European way of doing things where these things were developed, I think, in Europe,
Okay.
where they are a combination washer and dryer total. So you throw your clothes in, you hit the button, and it dries in one unit. What's nice about that is you don't have to do a stackable, which
Mhm.
is, vertically, you're going to be challenged on space. You don't have to do a side by side. Again, now you're challenged horizontally for
Mm.
space. You can slide it right into the bathroom or in the kitchen countertop, under the kitchen countertop, and it just disappears.
Mhm.
Now, granted, you're doing your laundry in your kitchen,
Yeah.
but if it's a space that you're not using very much, or it's for your mother-in-law or father,
Yeah.
Father-in-law.
There you
uh-huh,
go.
that gives them an opportunity to be self-sufficient within the space without using a lot of space.
Right.
Okay.
Wow, that's
That's
really
really neat.
interesting. And you mentioned some of these earlier, but are there some other things that someone can do to make an ADU designed for their future, like the universal design? Are there just initial, countertop heights, flooring?
Yeah, and that's a conversation that you wanna have right off with the people that you're working with.
Mm,
You mentioned these pre-built structures. A lot of times, they're not gonna be accessible or adaptable, and adaptability are 2 different things. So, understanding what those mean is important. It's a question to ask, and
Yeah.
it's a question to, or it's an answer to give to the professionals that you're working with. But it's important that, especially if, your parents are coming and they're going to live there for a while, it needs to be useful for them. And what does that mean, right? What does that mean to them?
Right. And making it comfortable for them.
Correct.
And every person is different. So their needs are going to be unique to them. And
Right.
so you talk through all of that. So I think we're going to shift over to Diana, who's going to
All
ask some
right.
quick fire
Ooh.
questions.
Right.
Here we go, John. What is the biggest myth homeowners believe about building an ADU?
Well, I mentioned the covered patio. I think, utilizing what is outside of the unit is important as designing the inside part of the unit, how that connects together. So, think beyond the walls
Oh,
and how you're going to use the space outside.
garage conversion or detached ADU, and why?
With a garage conversion, the structure is primarily already built. A lot of times that structure is older, but at least you have a foundation that's already there. You may have walls that are already there. And so you're adding to that. So it's sometimes it's easier.
Mhm.
And when I say it could be easier, sometimes it's harder because again,
Yeah.
it could be the existing structure could be rotting, could be
Oh,
just so old that, the previous code that was used to build it isn't in place anymore. The wood could be damaged and
oh gosh.
so then it's easier to cost out something that is detached because it's basically a brand new building. Now we're looking at, well, how do we get plumbing there? How do we get
Right.
electrical there? How do we get, all the utilities to the space? So if the unit is 250 feet away because you have a large property, it's going to take some doing to get the utilities there versus if I do it over the garage, I've already got some utilities there. I've already got structure there. Again, talk to your professional about it and see if that
Depends.
makes
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah. If budget allowed for one splurge in every ADU, what would it be?
Well, I like barbecuing.
Oh gosh. Yeah, I enjoy your
I
barbecue. It's
love barbecuing.
legendary.
So, again, thinking inside outside, if you're doing a full kitchen, if you already have a kitchen that's adjacent to where the ADU is and you're gonna end up using this as a multi-use space, then maybe you do a grill in there opposed to a standard cooktop. Maybe on the outside, you build an area that has a smoker that you can do that pulled pork and bring it into work. And, so think about the things that are outside of the norm
Right.
that give you joy.
I love that.
Personalized.
I
Great.
love that.
Thank you.
Well, do you have any final advice to homeowners who are thinking about building or remodeling an existing structure and building an ADU?
Most important thing is talk to a professional
Okay.
because they're going to be able to give you the ins and outs. There are so many facets to an ADU and not only the specifications and requirements the city is going to put on you, but also the design portion. You want a strong designer. Now, if you want to just build a box, that's fine. That could be your use and that's all you need to do. But if you're looking to kick it up a notch, you want it to be special, you want it to have and add value to your property, talk to a professional. We
Yeah.
can help you out and figure out a path for you. Maybe we mentioned something that you weren't even thinking about,
Yeah.
and that might lead you down a different path.
Well, John,
Awesome.
that's great advice. And thank you so much for sharing your expertise with us today.
Thank you,
And
John.
I'm sure homeowners have learned a lot, hopefully, from
Hopefully.
listening to you talk about it. I know I did.
Me too.
I appreciate you guys.
And that's a wrap on today's episode. If you enjoyed today's show, be sure to subscribe to Remodeling Reinvented wherever you listen to podcasts. And if you know someone who's thinking about remodeling, we'd love it if you shared this episode with them. Thanks for listening.